Ever since Disney took over Lucasfilm back in 2012 and Kathleen Kennedy was given the position as president of Lucasfilm, we have only seen the downfall of the Star Wars brand year by year ever since the release of The Force Awakens by 2015. Now, we already know that where we stand right now in 2024, the Star Wars brand is basically irredeemable at this point. We know that the Acolyte series really kind of was the final nail in the coffin at that. We have another Star Wars series upcoming called Skeleton Crew that's about to drop this December. Doesn't look promising to me. I don't know about you guys, but to me it's just not all that impressive. But focusing on Kathleen Kennedy here, there's been a lot of things going on behind the scenes between herself, Lucasfilm HQ, the Walt Disney Company, and among others like Bob Iger, the CEO. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. You can also follow me at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the great and kind support. So there's been a lot of things going on with many different aspects of Star Wars as a brand, and among other projects, we know that Star Wars Outlaws, the sales disaster that it is, was another major issue, not just for Ubisoft, but also for Lucasfilm, and I'll explain exactly why, and also exactly why it's really deeply impacting Kathleen Kennedy on an emotional scale. So there's been a lot of things going on between Lucasfilm HQ, the Lucasfilm Story Group, and how there's a lot of in-studio battles happening right now between them and the Walt Disney Company. So let's dive into this further. Now, we already know that the Star Wars Outlaws sales disaster is right on the same exact level of the Acolyte ratings disaster. I mean, they're both major disasters of 2024. Let's not, focus away from that. That is the major issue right now. But what's interesting about this is that given that those like Kathleen Kennedy have created so much damage to the Star Wars brand, CEO Bob Iger is also to blame for allowing Kennedy to remain at Lucasfilm since 2012. Now, one major development going on now has more to do with Kathleen Kennedy slamming the Disney executives after they canceled a major project that was going to expand the character Kay Vess from Star Wars Outlaws into live-action form. A monumental update to this situation now involves how Kathleen Kennedy recently had a very emotional moment behind the scenes after Disney board members shut down a recent project that was going to serve as a Disney Plus series that was planned to bring Kay Vess into live-action form as a major character / cameo, multiple cameos in fact. Kennedy was planning to debut her in the form of having multiple cameos for this series that was going to take place during the events of the original trilogy movies. Now, this was a project codenamed Atlas Point and was planned to be an 8-episode series, a limited one at that would focus on, of course, Kay Vess. The project was going to be announced during the holiday season of this year, and was going to be Kathleen Kennedy's dream project to not only reshape the original trilogy movies by George, but to also focus on yet another powerful female character set within the original trilogy. Now, since the Star Wars Outlaws sales disaster only made things worse for Lucasfilm and the Star Wars brand in its entirety, because of Ubisoft, Bob Iger made the ultimate call to cancel the project that would feature Kay Vess in multiple episodes, of course, coupled with a pair of new characters exclusive to the series. Now, there were multiple loud arguments that took place after Disney recently purged, get this, 85% of Disney live-action TV shows, as they now look only to focus on Star Wars movies instead, for the most part, and even that is beginning to fall into shambles. Kennedy, not so surprisingly, reportedly had multiple emotional moments since they already poured some funds into Star Wars Outlaws live-action adaptation that used funds from the sequel trilogy movies that now went to a complete waste for actual pre-production over this surprise new series that would now, of course, no longer actually be moving forward. Now, that's another thing about this. Before I move on, let me just say one thing about Kathleen Kennedy is that she obviously has no clue what she's doing with Star Wars. Now, the fact that she was using Star Wars Outlaws by Ubisoft as a way to use that character to become a part of a live-action project, to bring Kay Vess into live-action form, goes to show you that it's all about the messaging over at Disney. It's all about using another video game series to use that character Kay Vess, to just use it as an excuse to focus on another female-oriented character. Now look, there are multiple reasons why Star Wars Outlaws failed miserably. It didn't just have to do with Ubisoft's obvious, agenda and their overall focus on the character Kay Vess, but it also, from a sales point, from a technical point, as to the reason why that game failed miserably. And there are also multiple factors that went into this as to why Outlaws is a sales disaster. Now here's another thing, is that Kathleen Kennedy will do anything to focus away from a main male character being dominant in a Star Wars story. She was very open about this, by the way, in the past couple of days, that she wants to strictly focus on female-oriented characters moving on forward. That's exactly why, by the way, she greenlit the Wreaks Skywalker film, which, by the way, is in jeopardy right now. We'll talk more about that in the coming days. Whether or not that gets canceled, we'll have to wait and see. As of now, that movie is on hold, and there's a lot of things to talk about. Now, on top of this month, Kennedy is pressed to make a decision on a contract renewal, and she is desperately attempting to stay at Lucasfilm until 2027, the latest. The Outlaws sales disaster is yet another failure that led to the cancellation of a surprise major project that Kennedy was set to announce by this December, just ahead of the 2025 year-end Star Wars celebration in Japan. Already, Kennedy is involved in many in-studio battles with Bob Iger for canceling this live-action adaptation of Kay Vess into the Star Wars Disney Plus realm. So, I don't know if you guys knew about this, but we talked about this briefly last week. There was indeed a Lucasfilm purge, so to speak, quote-unquote, by the Disney heads, where now they're focusing so far away from Star Wars live-action shows and focusing more on movies instead. So a lot of Star Wars TV shows were axed, they were shelved, they were canceled, whatever you want to say. They are no longer moving forward. They are no longer happening. Alright, this is not to be confused with putting them on hold. They are flat out not happening anymore. So they want to use the Star Wars TV shows now as a bare minimum. Sure, you have Ahsoka Season 2 still happening, but they want to focus more on movies instead. And as I just mentioned before, even their movies are beginning to fall apart. You got Taika Waititi's movie in jeopardy. You've got the Rey Skywalker movie also in jeopardy. And James Mangold's Star Wars Jedi Prime film is also having a lot of issues. It's not a big surprise coming out of Lucasfilm, especially not a big shocker coming out of the Walt Disney Company. Now, at the same exact time, we already know that Kathleen Kennedy is going to endlessly try to defend herself. She will never admit failure. She will never admit why the Star Wars brand is at where it's at right now. And the truth behind that is because it all roots back to Kathleen Kennedy's overall agenda, how she handled things over at Lucasfilm, and Bob Iger is also to blame. I mean, he is the one that kept Kathleen Kennedy there. He could have easily, made the ultimate call early on to get somebody else in to really kind of do things differently as fast as possible after The Last Jedi. He didn't. So overall, I would like to hear what everyone has to say about this below in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.